Welcome back. This time we are going to talk about something that has been invoked as an explanation of Trump's chaotic policies on tariffs, and it's the Mar-a-Lago Accord. The Mar-a-Lago Accord could turn treasuries into much longer-term debt and force a devaluation that way of the dollar to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. That's the alleged goal. And some want to liken Mar-a-Lago Accord to Reagan's 1985 Plaza Accord, which tried to reduce the trade deficit with Japan and temporarily succeeded through, though at great cost for Japan, because that's where Japan's lost decades of growth and stagnation started. Well, let's see. Assuming that creditors agreed and that forced conversion of U.S. debt into longer-term debt was not taken by the markets as a default, that would be the second chapter of Trump's chaotic tariffs policies, as I said. But precisely because of what happened to Japan and China's excess capacity right now, China would not collaborate with Japan. And that's the first problem. This plan, if it exists, really has. Besides, it's true that the yuan depreciation, the currency manipulation of the yuan, explain the China shock of the early 2000s. But the currency manipulation is not longer the cause of China's competitiveness. If you want to see dirty tricks behind China, you should look into subsidies provided by the state or by the steal of intellectual property. Those are the factors that are more relevant now. Besides, due to its effects on inflation, most Americans would oppose depreciating the dollar to boost just to boost American manufacturing exports. It's true that, like in 1895, the Plaza Accords were directed directly to Japan, the country with which we had the largest trade deficit, 49.75 billion at the time. In 2024, our largest trade deficit is with Japan, but by a much larger amount, to $295.4 billion. So let's see this precedent to see if it's a real precedent for the Mar-a-Lago Accord. The Plaza Accord was an agreement basically with Japan and Germany to depreciate the dollar and therefore to appreciate the yen and the Dutch mark, respectively. And yes, it succeeded at making Japanese exports more expensive and depreciated the dollar. And it did so well that by 1987 it had to be reversed. But the gains in trade were short-lived because in 1992, with Bush Senior still in power, the balance of trade resumed a negative trend, and this time bigger than the one that had started in 1982, which motivated the Plaza Accord. Besides this short-term boost in exports, the Plaza Accord didn't increase for long the United States share in global manufacturing value added, which is the value we add to the raw materials, is the value added created by manufacturing. But yet manufacturing kept growing until the Great Recession after which it more or less stabilized but the intended goals of which were directed to the trade balance were short-lived. Proponents of this Plaza Accord argue that the dollar depreciation of the mid 1980s actually actually drove the export increase, although with some delay, because the effects of the dollar depreciation would have been obstructed by some costs of entry into the exporting sector. And yes, and that's true, but these sunk costs is something we are going to talk about in a little while, are precisely what makes all the difference between a short-lived experiment and a sustainable policy. Because without proper investment to make them sustainable, these gains are like in the Plaza Accord, short-lived. So as we mentioned, industrial production kept growing until the Great Recession, moments that cannot be explained by China, and yet as a percentage of GDP, the manufacturing participation kept shrinking. And with automation, the both in terms of the number of workers and as a share of employment, the jobs in manufacturing kept shrinking and shrinking for reasons that are not related to Japan or China after them, but in first place to automation. Several factors now, when it comes to manufacturing investment, several factors can explain the growth in this sector. Like, for instance, investment in research and development, government policies, infrastructure, education, because you need an educated workforce. And if you are not covering these ends, just depreciating the dollar is not going to help you much. Just consider all the good research and development cost to American manufacturing in the 60s as part of Kennedy's race to the moon. And even in present times, in more recent times, we have a lesson to learn from Germany in the 2010s, when with Angela Merkel, austerity prevailed over investments, made that now are making Germany's manufacturing less competitive with respect to China. And basically, the reasons are those: are a less educated workforce, less infrastructure, and yes, red tape also plays a role. But as I mentioned before, that's more related to the need to overhaul the government, not just to making cuts here and there arbitrarily, which will make it even more inefficient, and its responses to crisis let more tardy, less efficient. The implicit message is that manufacturing jobs will come back. The implicit message of this Mar-a-lago Accord, which is supposedly the second chapter of the chaotic tariff policy, is that jobs will come back, that they will be the light at the end of the tunnel. What will happen instead is that the higher prices will reduce the purchasing power of non-manufacturing workers and cheering the markets where they are employed. And as automation keeps reducing employment in manufacturing, service workers, these non-manufacturing workers, will be destined to watch from the other side of the window the good life this shrinking number of manufacturing workers have, and if Democrats can come with a better alternative, they could be inviting service workers to lead vicariously the good life of those manufacturing workers, and that this will be another ridiculous dent in the credibility of the party who, under FDR, was the party of the working class. We have to face the fact that right now manufacturing, even in countries with a long good record of manufacturing, is shrinking, and we have to learn the lesson of the good years manufacturing had after the New Deal. The secret was not that they were manufacturing. The secret was unionization. The secret was that the working class had a chance to have a fair share of the value they had created. And that's by saying nothing, the Democratic Party is tacitly agreeing with those who say that the NAFTA was the origin of all our problems. NAFTA, it's true, killed the good jobs that were in manufacturing, but they were in manufacturing. They were good jobs because they were unionized, not because they were in manufacturing by itself. And the rate of price increases in education, healthcare, and housing swallow all the gains in purchasing power those trade deals were supposed to bring. So here we have the lesson the Democrats should start jotting in their notebooks: unionization, purchasing power, inefficient markets in housing, manufacturing, and education. And that's where they should be. Around those points is where Democrats should be jotting their counter narrative, which they are not doing. And having said that, I leave you with our newscast.
Good evening. This is Brian Thomas Simons, and these are the main headlines of this hour. Among other news:
1. New 266 executive decisions were released last Thursday in the Oval Office. Among them, A. To State Secretary Marco Rubio's request, and for the third time since the inauguration of President Trump's second term, a new executive order has been issued forbidding the use of the terms Little Marco or Lil Marco when referring to the state secretary in official documents. B. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem will not be called the Homeland Security's mascot or in any other way mocked in official documents just for her inclination to use costumes or make cosplay. C. Secretary of State Little Marco will receive 3 more medals and be congratulated for his birthday, whenever that day is. 2. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth creates a new intelligence unit in the Pentagon specialized in extracting intelligence through drunkenness. To the point, Secretary Hegseth declared, "I was always impressed by the use of sodium pentothal in the movies. So one day I was in Signal. I wondered, what if we used booze instead? So I decided we had to try and that I had to lead the experiment and polish it to the point it could produce intelligence we could rely on. That's my baby, and that's why I am personally leading the unit." The new unit, whose name has still not been disclosed, will be under the umbrella of the DIA. 3. DNC launches campaign, Alien is not cool. After the proven success of the 2024 campaign, Trump is not cool, DNC has launched the campaign, Alien is not cool. Chair Ken Martin declared adamantly, "Our strategists have concluded that that's all the American people need to know. That alien is not cool." When reporter Cleve R. Wootson Jr., who was fired 2 weeks ago from the Washington Post by Secretary Leavitt and then again a week ago from the Washington Afro-American, also by Secretary Leavitt, and now the host of his own YouTube channel, noticed that Musk's first name had been misspelled, that it was Elon, not Elian. Chair Martin declared that that's impossible. Our strategists are never wrong, before adding that Woodson's observation was an obvious result of his racism and misogyny. 4. After watching the theatrical release, the new chair Ken Martin ratified yesterday DNC's January 31 endorsement of Rachel Zegler's Snow White movie. Chair Martin declared that the movie represents all we are, the indefatigable struggle of cool kids to express themselves and show the world that they are cool. The indefatigable struggle of women to change the patriarchy incarnated in the evil queen. Well, you get the idea. The point is that this is just one more battle in our war against Trump's tyranny, but don't forget that we will not rest. We will win. We will win. 5. After President Trump hinted at the idea of a third run in 2028, Minority Leader Schumer, asked by reporters in the corridors of the Senate, declared that this is nothing new. President Trump had that idea already in 2017, but we will abide by President Trump's new interpretation of the Constitution. As Democrats, it's our duty. If President Trump says that the 22nd Amendment is invalid because of DEI, we might disagree, but we can't respond with anything resembling opposition. Voters may say that we are weak, but they will never be able to say that we are not gracious and civil in defeat, even proactively. That's why Americans must trust us. We will not rest. We will win. We will win. 6. After several posts in Substack criticizing President Trump's tariffs, economist Paul Krugman was declared an enemy alien, an anchor baby, and a DEI terrorist under the Enemy Aliens Act. As a consequence, he was deported to the infamous Salvadoran Sacó prison. This action comes after journalist David K. Johnston was sent to Guantanamo because of his unauthorized biography of President Trump, The Big Cheat. In noticeable distress, and to bring visibility to the arrest of her husband, Krugman's wife was seen trying to talk to DNC Chair Ken Martin, but an aide informed her that the DNC was very busy now endorsing Rachel Zegler's Snow White and invited the reporters present outside DNC's premises to give the movie a like in Disney+. 7. After the turmoil caused by President Trump's tariffs policies on Liberation Day, which have been put on pause for 90 days, the president has good news for American workers. 90% of you will live with higher taxes and no safety network, but you will be able to enjoy the good life of manufacturing workers vicariously. If you are in services, it will be like living the lives of your favorite reality show stars. But it will not end up there, because you will have the reruns. No new episodes. Because those manufacturing workers will be replaced by robots, but it will be great television. 8. Pete Hegseth's resume leaked to the press by Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee after it was revealed he was the first to be fired in The Apprentice, White House edition. Approached by reporters, Secretary Hegseth declared that Mike is obviously a sore loser. And no. He is defaming me when he insinuates I was dishonorably discharged from the army for being drunk. I myself crossed it out. Can't you see it? What matters is that I am still in competition and he is not. 9. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, approached by reporters about photographs included in her biography leaked by Ambassador Mike Huckabee, declared that I have already told Ambassador Huckabee that his attacks should be directed to Tulsi Gabbard, that it's her who is in The Apprentice White House edition, not me, but it's useless. And I should remind Ambassador Huckabee that now I have a President Trump's executive decision saying he can't keep calling me the Homeland Security's mascot. Then, when asked about the chronological impossibility of her appearances with President Reagan and at the Yalta Conference, that it's a simple copy and paste made by a basic image editor, she declared that President Trump is preparing another executive decision forbidding any mention of that issue too. 10. Eugene Howard Shelton, a man who broke naked into a home in Maricopa County, Arizona, under the excuse of being chased by an alligator, will be compensated with $100,000 after testifying in court that he, at the moment of the break-in, held the religious conviction that he was being chased by the reptile. If you have a deeply held patriotic or religious belief, that is enough, according to Arizonan law, to break into any premises. That's the doctrine behind the January 6th break-in in Congress. So here the judge is just applying our state laws and the Constitution, declared Shelton's lawyer, as both abandoned the court's offices. On the other hand, the children who tried to prevent Shelton's break-in will be referred to the Arizona Juvenile Corrections for putting Shelton at risk of being attacked by the alligator that was chasing him according to his deeply held religious beliefs.
This has been the news of this hour. Sponsored by Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit. Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior? Did you vote for Trump in 2016 and then in 2020? This is the right church for you. If so, Church of the Holy Redeemer's Power in the Spirit is the only Christian church that can promise you in the Lord to have 72 virgins in heaven for only a donation of $50 a month. You will have access to those 72 virgins in heaven. For an additional $25, you will be allowed to replace 10 of them, and for $100, Heaven Premium, you will be allowed to choose them for yourself. Guaranteed, if you're not satisfied with those 72 virgins after you die, full refund of your money. We accept Visa, MasterCard, American Express, and Discover.